In the human world, joy and suffering often intertwine, like shadow and form. One may be born into luxury, live amidst wealth and grandeur, yet still cannot escape the cycle of impermanence. There are lives seemingly protected by love and wealth, yet in a single moment, everything can vanish like mist and smoke. The story of Patacara is just such a tale. From a young lady cherished by her parents in a luxurious mansion, she entered a life of tragic love and embarked on a journey full of storms. Along that path, she tasted the bitter extremes of life, fleeting happiness, profound loss, and moments of madness that left her soul shattered. Yet, even from the depths of suffering, the seed of awakening began to sprout. For in the light of the Dharma, one sees clearly that suffering is not an end, but a gateway to transformation and liberation. Due to the results of past karmic conditions, she was born into the family of a bank owner in Savatthi, noble and wealthy. Her parents pampered her greatly, giving her a room on the 7th floor of a mansion, attended day and night by servants. When she was 16, a family of equal social standing came with lavish gifts to propose marriage to their son, also a young nobleman. The girl remained silent, for she had secretly fallen in love with a male servant in the household. He was only a few years older than her, strong and well-built, with the appearance of a handsome young man. Their romance had been going on for several months, like fire close to dry straw, fueled by the passions of youth, and they had shared an intimate relationship, as planned. The girl said to the young man, "I cannot marry that pale-faced nobleman. Besides, I am already involved with you. Let us run away." "I'm afraid." "Madam," the girl frowned. "Madam? Nothing. We are already husband and wife in spirit. Think about the future. There's no time to waste. Hurry. What should I do?" "Oh, don't be slow and foolish. Watch the gates. See where the servants go, up and down the mansion, the gardens, the east and west walls, and check if by the second watch they are asleep. Then find a way to get an elephant, and we will escape together. Understood?" "Yes, madam." "Madam again." The young man laughed mischievously and went about his task. At the appointed day and hour, the girl gathered all their valuables, personal belongings, and necessities into a large sack, then rode off with the male servant on an elephant. It was the beginning of the third watch. Everyone in the household was fast asleep, fully sated. After traveling some distance, the young man asked, "If the master catches us, will he really kill us? He will have someone beat you to death. Aren't you afraid of the law?" The girl giggled. "You know nothing. Killing a slave is common. By law, killing a slave is not a crime, because a slave is not considered a person." The young man shivered, glanced behind, listened carefully, and seeing no one chasing them and hearing no sound, finally breathed a long, relieved sigh. They arrived in a rural area, the young man's native village, about 3 or 4 yojanas from Savatthi, and stopped there. The girl sold the elephant and her belongings, using the money to purchase a plot of land, hire someone to build a house, and acquire the necessary household items for daily life. Over time, the young couple became a proper farming family. The young man tended the garden, planting fruit trees and vegetables, while she gathered firewood, cooked, and maintained the house and yard. Their life seemed peaceful and orderly, and everyone thought it was very happy. After 4 to 5 months, as her belly grew larger, the girl became tired, discouraged and irritable, often snapping and acting hot-tempered without reason. She neglected the chores of firewood, cooking, and cleaning, while the young man patiently did everything quietly. Her natural tendencies as a young lady who liked to command and give orders, suppressed by their initial passionate love, began to re-emerge, disturbing the household. and upsetting the harmony of husband leads, wife follows. The young man, by nature faithful and patient, did not mind resuming his role as a servant, but he was criticized by his wife for cooking food for the dog and the ox, rather than for humans. As her belly grew, her discomfort, obstinacy, and irritability increased. She often yelled at her husband for no reason. Her subjective reasons were understandable. As the birth approached, she felt anxious and fearful. How would the birth go? Who had experience with childbirth or medicines? She knew nothing, and her childlike husband knew nothing either. Humans give birth, but the spoiled young lady feared as if she were birthing an ox, a dog, a cat, a chicken, or a duck. At this point, the girl truly longed for the hands and heart of her mother, the warm homeland every child yearns for. "Mother, I am suffering so much," she whispered, tears streaming silently through the night. While beside her, the young man snored carelessly. He had worked hard all day, managing household chores on top of his labor, so it was understandable. Then, as she had decided, the girl said, "I must return to my parents' home to give birth. Please prepare to take me there." The young man shook his head. "That is impossible." "Why?" "If I go back there, the master will beat me to death. If not that, he will have his men torture me until I'm half dead. I'm not going. I don't want to die yet." The girl gave her reason. "No. After all, I'm married now. How could my father kill my husband, leaving his beloved daughter a widow? And besides, there's the law." The young man shook his head softly. "No, definitely not. I'm just a slave. It's common for the master to kill a slave. According to the law, killing a slave is not a crime because slaves are not considered people." "Wow." The girl was surprised. "Where did you learn that?" The young man laughed lightly and replied, "From my mistress herself." "That's exactly what you said when you left home just a while ago. You have a good memory. A life like mine, like a tiny shrimp or a mosquito, also wants to live and doesn't want to die. Even if I don't want to remember, I still remember." "Wow, now you're reasoning again." "Also learned from my mistress. This foolish head of mine slowly begins to get sharp. You're teasing me again." "No, I wouldn't dare." In the end, when the girl begged, the young man remained resolutely shaking his head. Not knowing what else to do, she waited until one day, when he went to sell produce at a distant market. The girl prepared a few necessities, entrusted the house to a neighbor, and set off. When she left, she asked someone to relay the message to her husband that she had returned to her parents' home to give birth. The next day, when the young man returned home and learned what had happened, he thought to himself, "It's a pity. The daughter of a noble family, delicate and weak, endured so much hardship because of her love for me. Now she's traveling alone, pregnant, and vulnerable. If anything happens to her, who will take care of her and protect her?" Without wasting a moment, the young man packed some food for the journey, grabbed a machete, and hurriedly set off. Thanks to traveling quickly, including at night, he reached the girl 3 days later, near a forest's edge. It turned out she had already given birth to a chubby, beautiful baby boy. They looked at each other, smiling brightly, happy. They embraced each other, passing the baby back and forth, hugging and kissing. They didn't plan to go any further. Instead, they helped each other return to the family, to their home. The story goes that giving birth to their second son was similar to when their first son had just learned to walk. The girl, carrying and guiding the child, along with her swollen belly, was on her way back to her parents' house. Halfway there, at the edge of the forest, she gave birth again, and the young man arrived just in time. However, this time, the calm of the day was replaced by a storm that swept away lives and fates. Death and life intertwined. Desolate suffering. As soon as the baby was born, a tiny lump of red flesh, a storm suddenly struck. The trees twisted violently, snapping and cracking, with leaves falling in a storm. Under a large tree shaking in the wind, the girl only had time to remove her outer coat to wrap it around her baby, lying face down, enduring the rain pouring down on her back to protect the child beneath her. The baby cried out loudly, soaked and cold. Not knowing what else to do, she had to shift her position, crouching to shield both of them from the rain. The young man arrived just then. He could not say anything, or even see the baby before the girl. Exhausted, weakly spoke in broken words. Quickly, find me something to cover over our backs. The young man nodded, scanning the area, and quickly grabbed a machete to head into the forest. He found a cluster of trees with large leaves, chopped them down, and gathered a pile. Then, he chose some forest branches, about the size of a wrist, cutting them roughly the length of a forearm, intending to use them to build a small shelter. When he thought he had enough, he lifted the machete, pulled down a bundle of vines to use as ropes. But suddenly, a large snake, hidden somewhere, lunged at him and bit him to death on the spot. It was likely a highly venomous snake. The girl, lying on the ground for so long, shifted her position to relieve the strain, kneeling with her hands spread flat to shield the child from the rain. But she waited, and still, the young man didn't return. She thought to herself, just a little longer, he'll be back soon. But after a long time, still no sign of him. She reassured herself again, he'll be back soon. Lie still, children. Be good. The baby continued to cry, its voice growing hoarse. As dawn broke, the storm subsided. The wind faded, but still no sign of her husband. The girl began to think, perhaps he was afraid of responsibility and ran away. What a coward. Looking at the baby, wrapped warm and well protected, she fed it, and it slept peacefully. But the other child, pale and trembling, broke her heart as she didn't know what to do. The food she had brought was no longer usable. As the bundle had been soaked in the mud and water, there was no hope left for her husband to return. And she had come to the grim conclusion that the heartless man had abandoned his wife and child in their time of crisis. He had fled, soaring high and running away. Staggering to her feet, she weakly lifted one child in her arms, holding the other by the hand, and followed the path her husband had taken, step by step, breathing heavily. She was exhausted from the struggles of the previous night, with no food to sustain her. When she reached a thicket, she froze. Her husband was dead. His face was dark, lying lifeless next to an anthill, with red and black ants beginning to swarm over him. She felt an overwhelming sorrow. The more she thought about it, the more heartbroken she became, realizing she had wrongly blamed him. The mountains and forests were cold and indifferent, and the way back home seemed endlessly far. There was no one around, no village, no smoke rising, wild animals, tigers, leopards, beasts. She briefly thought about this, but quickly wiped away her tears, turned her face away, and hurried to move faster with her children. Reaching a narrow river, she stopped. Normally, this would be a shallow crossing, but the heavy rain from the previous night had turned it into a fast-moving, turbulent stream, with debris and logs floating by. The three of them could not cross together. After thinking for a moment, she stood up, gathered some dry branches and leaves to create a makeshift bed for the infant, who was sleeping soundly after being fed. Then, she carried the older child and waded through the river, carefully stepping in the water that reached her chest. Cold, hungry, and exhausted, but driven by the instinct of motherhood, she managed to cross to the other side. After laying the child down on a dry patch of earth, she took a few deep breaths to gather her strength, then rushed back to cross the river again. When she was almost there, a large eagle swooped down quickly, its talons reaching out to snatch the baby, lifting it high into the sky. The girl was stunned, raising her arms and waving frantically while running after the bird, shouting, screaming in a frantic panic. The child on the other side of the river, seeing its mother waving, thought she was calling it and rushed toward the water, wading in. Within just a few steps, the strong current swept the child away, and all that was left was the child's head, bobbing in the red water, drifting farther and farther until it disappeared. The girl finally made it across the river, collapsing onto the ground, frozen in silence, as if turned to stone. It was over. Her husband and 2 children were gone. It was over. They were all dead. A deep sense of despair consumed her. Not a single tear flowed from her dry, empty eyes. The sun had risen high. She had to continue her journey, her stomach empty, her heart hollow. She walked like a sleepwalker. All thoughts now depended solely on instinct, muttering unconsciously, as if mad. The husband was bitten by a snake. One child was taken by an eagle. Another swept away by the water. Ha ha ha, dead. They're all dead. Upon reaching the city and walking down a street, she could no longer remember the way home. As her consciousness flickered, the girl asked a man walking in the opposite direction, "Sir, do you know where the house of the bank owner is?" The man looked at her with a look of horror. At that moment, her cloak was torn to shreds, barely hanging on in pieces. Her face was gaunt and pale, covered in dirt, making it hard to tell whether she was a young woman, an old woman, or a mad woman. But then, he felt pity and replied, "I know that man, but why do you ask? It's my house, my father's, my mother's." The man paused, silent for a moment. "Don't go there anymore." "Why?" The man hesitated again before saying, "Last night, there was a fierce storm. The lightning from the sky struck the mansion, and it was completely destroyed, burned to the ground. Perhaps hundreds of people in there turned to ash. There's nothing left there anymore." The man turned and walked away. The girl sank to the ground, no longer knowing what to do. She had truly gone mad. A few days later, the streets of Savatthi saw a mad woman, wandering aimlessly with nothing covering her body. Wherever she went, people chased her away as if she were a pest. Some cursed her, others threw sticks, dirt, and trash at her, shouting insults. The girl staggered, laughing loudly, occasionally mumbling, "Husband dead, 2 children dead, parents dead, siblings dead, servants dead, dogs and cats dead. They're all dead. They're all truly dead." At that time, the Buddha was staying at the great Jetavana monastery. Early in the morning, at the end of the 3rd watch, while observing the world, he became aware of the situation with the girl. They were the 7 sisters from the time of Buddha Kassapa, who, due to their past merit, had been reborn in this life. But this girl had endured the greatest suffering among the 7 sisters, and her human strength had reached its limits. Unconsciously, in the afternoon, the girl wandered into the gate of Jetavana Monastery, with a group of children shouting and laughing loudly behind her, throwing dirt, trash, and cursing at her as they followed. At that moment, the Buddha was giving a Dharma talk in the main assembly hall. Some attendants, seeing the mad woman coming toward the sacred area, felt ashamed and dared not look. Others tried to chase her away, along with the children. Using his spiritual powers, the Buddha helped the girl regain her senses and called out from the assembly hall, "Let Patacara come to where the Tathagata is." At that moment, the girl seemed to wake from a long stupor. She looked at herself, realizing that she was completely exposed, and in fear, she crouched down, lying on her belly, with her face touching the ground. An attendant, hearing the Buddha's call, took off his own robe and threw it to her, saying, "Here, sister, cover yourself." The Tathagata has called for you. Now, people dare to approach. Some offered towels to wipe her face. Others provided scarves or bands to help her cover herself so that she could walk properly into the assembly hall, fully awake, though still thin and pale. After putting on her robe, tying it, and wiping her face clean, the girl began to show glimpses of her former youthful beauty, looking not yet 20 years old. When she reached the Buddha, the girl prostrated with her body flat on the ground, crying silently, as if she had never cried before. She wept and recounted the deaths of her child, her husband, and her parents, with a voice full of deep sorrow and misery. The Buddha allowed her to cry for a while. Then, using his compassion and gentle Dharma voice, he spoke to her. Enough, Patacara. It's not just now that you cry for your child, your husband, your parents. How little are those tears? Throughout the 3 realms, in the 6 paths of samsara, you have cried for millions of children, millions of husbands, millions of fathers, and millions of mothers, each in different circumstances, from sickness, from death by beheading, hanging, losing family wealth, imprisonment, false accusations, earthquakes, house fires, elephant trampling, tiger attacks, snake bites, arrows, sword wounds, betrayal, drowning, dismemberment, skinning, and leaving bodies on the battlefield. The total amount of those tears would surpass the water of the 4 oceans. Hearing the Buddha's words, Patacara stopped crying. She wiped away her tears, prostrated again, and said, "Venerable Sir, I have no refuge, no protection. Please help me." The Buddha responded, "Patacara, in this world, no one can rely on anyone. No one can protect anyone. No one can help anyone. Husbands, wives, children, parents, and relatives, all are ultimately taken by the messenger of death. And listen, Patacara, only those who have crossed to the far shore of birth and death, those who know how to abandon, to renounce desires, anger, sensual cravings, attachments, delusions, and wrong views of self, attachment to self, and grasping to self, those who see clearly that all things are empty, impermanent, and non-self, only those beings truly have a firm refuge, a safe protection from the messenger of death." After hearing the Buddha's words, the girl attained stream entry, sotapanna, and the Dharma eye arose within her, allowing her to clearly see the path and the way forward. She knelt and requested ordination. The Buddha instructed that she be sent to the nunnery for care, where she would be looked after by the nuns. Later, Elder Nun Gautam gave her the full ordination, and she lived a life of renunciation and virtuous conduct. One day, Bhikkhuni Patacara was washing her feet. The first time, the water flowed a short distance before stopping, soaking into the ground. The second time, the water flowed a bit farther, but stopped again, soaking into the earth. The third time, the water flowed even farther before halting, soaking into the ground. She pondered deeply and thought to herself, the life of a human is just like this. These are the 3 stages of life. The first time, the water only flows a short distance. This is the death of youth. The second time, the water flows a bit farther. This is the death of middle age. The third time, the water flows farther still. This is the death of old age. In the end, everyone must die, whether young or old. So it turns out that whatever is born must also die. At that moment, the Buddha, who was in his meditation chamber, used his spiritual power and appeared before her in a radiant light, with a miraculous, beautiful form. He spoke to her. "Yes, that is correct, Patacara. All beings must die. This is inevitable. The most important thing is to live meaningfully, to live in a way that benefits oneself and others, bringing peace to both oneself and others. Higher than all these things is to live in such a way that we can clearly see the truth, to see the arising and passing of the five aggregates in every moment, in every instant. To summarize this teaching, the Buddha recited a verse. What is the use of living 100 years? The Dharma comes and goes without knowing it. One day is truly unpredictable. See how the Dharma of birth and death reveals impermanence. The Buddha's verse had barely ended when Patacara attained arahantship, gaining supreme wisdom and the fourfold freedom from all obstacles. Later, she shared the story of her past lives, much like the 7 princesses from the time of Buddha Kassapa. She had been the 3rd daughter, named Bhikkhuna, in that previous life. From that point on, she dedicated herself to studying the rules and living according to them, maintaining her conduct with seriousness, and as a role model, she became famous for her profound Dharma teachings and verses about the suffering of life, often offering comfort and sharing her compassion with women in unfortunate circumstances. She had many female disciples, both lay and ordained. The Buddha praised Patacara for her exemplary life and adherence to the rules. She was regarded as the foremost in law knowledge and discipline among the nuns, similar to how Venerable Upali was known for his expertise among the monks. Patacara's story leaves us with a profound lesson. Even though she was born into luxury, with love and family, she still faced loss, suffering, and death. Life is impermanent. Where there is union, there is separation. Where there is birth, there is death. No one can hold on to anything. Spouses, children, parents, wealth, and power all eventually disappear like a fleeting dream. Yet suffering is not hopelessness. It is when all worldly refuges are lost that one realizes that only the Dharma is the true refuge, awakening to see the truth, letting go of attachment, keeping the mind clear, and taking refuge in the Dharma. That is the path to transcend the ocean of suffering and samsara. Like dew on the tip of grass, human life is short. But if we return to the light of the Dharma, we can find peace even amidst impermanence. The message for us today is, start planting the seed of mindfulness in your everyday life. Learn to see impermanence clearly so that you may appreciate what you have. Let go of attachment to nourish peace in your heart. Do not wait for loss to make you turn back. Right now, each breath, each step is an opportunity to return to true peace. If you feel touched by this story, please share it to spread the good karma and let more people hear it. Don't forget to hit like so we know you value this content, and click subscribe to not miss the next profound Buddhist stories. Each share is a way to plant the seed of compassion, helping the light of the Dharma spread far and wide.